Awesome. It looks like we just went live. Salam and welcome everyone to the Lobbying 101 intro / advocacy to policy session. My name is Najma Osman and I am the policy associate at CAIR Washington, and I'll be co-hosting this session with my colleague Seemab, the community organizer. Katie is going to be uploading the slides in a sec. Awesome. So as you all know, this session is a part of CAIR Washington's Lobbying Day, Muslim Day at the Capitol, and is co-sponsored by Somali Health Board. The purpose of this presentation, and all of MDAC really, is to demystify the Capitol, get a better understanding of the legislative process in Washington, and to really encourage folks to use their voices both in and outside of the legislative session. We are strong supporters of immigrants and refugees in our state, and especially want to uplift two budget items during this session related to refugee funding. I'll talk a little bit more about our MDAC bills in later part of the session, but just to let you all know, the $2.2 million governor's proposed budget to expand legal services to assist Afghan arrivals is really critical to the services that CAIR Washington provides. And second, the budget request made by Representative Mylene Tai for $30 million in addition to state funds to support the resettlement infrastructure in our state to serve all refugees is really, really crucial to the work that we do and crucial to the work that a lot of Afghan resettlement organizations are doing in Washington state. And we'll continue to update you on how you can take action on these items. With that said, I'll pass it to Seemab to kick us off.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Thank you for joining us today with our Muslim Day at the Capitol, doing it virtual. You can call it MDAC for sure, and if you do it outside, you get bonus points for being cool. Again, thank you for joining us. And if we can get to the next slide, what we want to do is we want to be able to let you know kind of like the basics of what it's like lobbying in Washington, the need to know. So in today's presentation, one, we'll be doing some welcoming and lobbying basics. And two, we'll be going into the legislative session, what it's like, the bills that we're actually for and against, and the committees in which they sit under, and how that process works. Then we'll go further into spelling out the Muslim Day of Action legislative priorities and the next steps and some follow-ups for you guys, as well as what to expect later on in the day today as well. So inshallah, what I also want you guys to keep in mind with the next slide is that we are working on a little bit of a tight timeline today with you guys joining us. So what we ask of you is that if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, but make sure you go into the chat function and input your questions in there. And between Najma and I, as we juggle in our presentation with you guys today, we will be answering your questions in the chat. That way we can keep things a lot more fluid and streamlined, and we can get through today and actually, inshallah, get you guys on time to the panel, which is following our presentation today. Moving on, as we move forward, as I said, this panel actually right here is what you guys will be also, inshallah, be a part of. Starting from 11 to 12:15 today. And so this panel will be taking place just after our 101 presentation. And next we'll be going into, or at least starting in with the layers of government. As you see, unfortunately, we don't get to attend in full presence at the Capitol due to COVID, but we are still able to represent our communities and its interests with today's bill. So you see a picture of our previous gathering, but inshallah, with you guys' permission, if you guys are all right with it, maybe we can get a group picture virtually online later on, if we have the capability to do so. Let us know in the chat also if you guys want to be part of a group picture, and we'll see if we have that function available for us towards the end of the meeting. And as we start, we want to start defining a few things for you guys between governing bodies and branches. Going into the next slide. Now, as we have it, governing bodies within how things work for us, you have local, you have state, and you have federal governing bodies. This is how our cities, our states, and our country operates, and how they communicate. This is important because you have a vital function in being able to communicate at all these levels today. And that's what we're here to kind of spell out for you and kind of, demystify barriers to how you communicate effectively with your legislators. Branches of government. There's executive, which is the presidential level. You have legislative, which is senators and representatives, the Congress of our country, as well as within our state. And then you have judicial. You have the executive level, the highest level of judiciary that makes decisions ultimately on what's legal, what's not legal, what's constitutional, what's not constitutional at that level. And as we move into the next slide, getting at the lobbying aspect of things. So moving on, meeting your representatives is not only just a demystifying experience, it's an empowering experience from both young to old. I remember my very first time actually meeting my legislators and feeling intimidated, but on the same day at the very end, feeling incredibly empowered because of how easy the access was, especially when you're guided through it. Inshallah, hopefully we can provide that for you guys today. So let's step into the next slide. Now, as we see, COVID impacts how we are able to effectively communicate with our legislators. But what we have done is that we've set up this virtual space. So inshallah, today, you guys would be able to see exactly how we get to still grab a hold and set these meetings up with our legislators and provide feedback and input. So we're in a virtual lobbying space. Not sure in our webinar if we have the capability, but if you have a raised hand feature, then when you are actually in your meetings with your legislator today, it'll be facilitated with one of your CAIR representatives today, inshallah. And you'll be in a room virtually with your legislator and yourself or several members within your group. If there is a group and it feels large enough, make sure that if you do have access to it, look at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom, and you should be able to see a raised hand feature. If you click on that, right on the top of your screen over here, you'll see a little hand show up. This will allow us to be able to track and be able to say, okay, next question, and move on to that next person, and inshallah, it be you. So make sure that if it's available, you use the raised hand feature. Community rules that will help you go through this process. Make sure you follow the lead. As I said, you'll have a representative from CAIR that'll be with you in these meetings, in these virtual spaces, and follow their lead. Make sure that you give space, you take turns, and you kind of time yourself so we're not taking up too much space. Create space for others and use active listening. Oftentimes, you can listen to people and understand, but you can also kind of read between the lines when there's interest, disinterest. In active listening, feel free to take personal notes. Feel free to judge your legislator and write notes about what you feel they may be feeling or not expressing, or what your understanding may be of if you have better questions to ask. Use active listening, take some notes, and see if you can get a better hold of what's actually taking place sometimes. You don't get the full output sometimes from your legislator or if you're meeting with their staff. So it's good to mark some of these things down. And moving into the next slide. Now, yes, getting into understanding how the entire process works. Who are these people? Well, in your state, you have 49 legislative districts. It's all broken down based on population. And as the census just passes, that actually dictates that if there's a population growth, maybe there's room for creating another district. Well, in this case, the state of Washington has 49 legislative districts. meaning they also have 49 senators because it's one senator per district. Often you have 2 representatives per district, so you have 98 House representatives. Now, they are all responsible for drafting and introducing bills, voting to pass or kill bills, and debating the merits of a bill. Now, you can find your district senator representative at the link that we have on the screen. I know that you can't click the link on the screen, so we'll make sure that we put it in our chat box. If you have it open right now, you should be able to access that link when we put it in there. Go ahead and click on it so it opens in your browser window and you can go through that later on. Next screen. And a short session. So what is a short session? A short session, it's updating the state's 2-year budget, responding to new crises, addressing unfinished business from the year before. Short sessions happen every even year, and every odd year is a long session. The difference between the two is that a short session is 60 days, and it works on fixing legislation that has already passed. Long session passes legislation often. Sometimes you got to let it breathe for a year to see, are there some inaccuracies, anything we need to revisit or update, or is there something about this legislation that wasn't working right? And it gives us that opportunity to fix it. Lobbying is a little bit different depending on the short or long session. Long sessions can have a lot of bills. Short session oftentimes not so heavy on the bills, more revisiting few new bills, 4 of which we'll actually talk about today. Next slide. All right. And what is lobbying? So lobbying is where one seeks to influence a politician or public official on an issue. Lobbying comes from corporations, nonprofits, governmental agencies and departments, and the general public like you. Together, we make a good 1-2 punch. Lobbying can persuade public officials, votes, and opinions. Next slide. Also, ways you can lobby. And again, you don't have to be a lobbyist to do it. Lobbyists or lobbyers can do this by profession and career. Oftentimes you have very big companies and corporations that want to be able to make sure that they're getting their agenda put forth in the most effective manner, and money can help that. Sometimes you also have lobbyists for agriculture and farming and union organizing. So what you can do is that by lobbying, you can let legislators know why they should support or oppose a bill. We have both examples for you today, and end up influencing a policy. Lobbyers can speak at a committee hearings for or against bills, meet with legislators, and send them materials. Yeah, you can do that. It is your right to lobby. Next slide. And so why take the time to lobby? It kind of speaks for itself now that we're up to this point, but it's still good to be able to spell out some of the nuance. A direct chance to impact what becomes law, very direct when you can actually sit in front of a legislator who is probably gunning for a law that would be detrimental to our communities. And you can be a person who represents that community voice, because it's not often used enough. So your presence is very vital. You can share opinions, express support or disagreement about a proposed piece of legislation that can eventually become law. Your perspective, experience, concerns, and facts impact the matters. Making them more aware of the contents of a bill helps them know the public's perception. You can successfully sway a legislator's opinion on the matter and therefore their vote. Next slide. Now, what I want to do here is that I'm actually going to pass the baton on to sister Najma, and Najma is actually going to take you through the actual bills process and the entire makeup in itself. So Najma,
Yeah, so thank you, Seemab.
well,
Now that you've heard about what lobbying is and what that looks like in the state legislature, we're going to talk about bills and where bill ideas come from. So as you may know, laws begin as ideas, right? And these ideas may come from a representative, may come from special interest groups, or it might come from a citizen like me and you. Citizens who have ideas for laws can contact the representatives to discuss their ideas. And this is why it's really important to stay engaged with your legislators throughout the year and not just during session, because a lot of the bill ideas and language are actually created during the interim period, which is the time period between the time period outside of the legislative process. So how exactly does a bill become a law, right? This Schoolhouse Rock video does a really good job at synthesizing the process and making it catchy. So I think we're gonna cue that instead. Real quick, if Katie, you could click on that link. I don't think I hear the sound.
Okay, give me 1 second.
All right, thank you.
What's that?
Great, that works
You
great.
sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
Awesome. Katie, if you could go back to this PowerPoint slide, that would be great. So obviously that video talks about how a bill, kind of becomes a law federally.
Here
It's a
are
very
5
similar
Star Wars
process
facts you didn't
statewide.
know.
After a bill is introduced in either the Senate or the House of Representatives by a member, it's referred to a committee for a hearing. The committee studies the bill and may hold public hearings on it. And that's, where as a constituent, you'd be able to provide testimony for a bill of interest. Then they could pass the bill, they could reject it, or they could take no action on the bill. If the bill is passed, it's read in open session of the House or Senate, and then it's referred to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee can either place the bill on the second reading calendar for debate, like before the entire body, or take no action. If it goes to the second reading, it's same thing again, they read through it, subject to debate, and then they add amendments if there are any amendments. And then finally, it's placed on a third reading calendar for the last passage. And then that is the process in which it ends through one house. And then, of course, the bill goes to the same procedure in the other house. If amendments are made in the other house, the first house must approve those changes. And when the bill is accepted in both houses, it's signed by the respective leaders and then sent to the governor. If the governor signs the bill into law, the governor could sign the bill or they could veto it. If the governor fails to act on the bill, then it becomes law without a signature. So that is the bill process. And that is how bill becomes a law in Washington state. If we can go on to the next slide, please. On the topic of bills, these are the bills that we're talking about with legislators later today as a part of MDAC. The first bill that we have listed here is HB or House Bill 1153, and that is basically about expanding language access in K-12 schools across our state. And this is really important because language access is really insufficient in Washington schools. And this bill, House Bill 1153, seeks to expand language access by requiring public and charter schools to implement a culturally responsive language access program through systemic family engagement. The next bill we have on the slide is House Bill 1852. It's actually another bill about language accessibility. It's specifically about language access in the healthcare system. And language access in the healthcare system is a really critical issue impacting Washington families across the state. House Bill 1852 aims to reduce harmful and costly medication errors by requiring that pharmacies provide prescription container labels in both English and a readable language for patients with limited English proficiency from 15 major languages. And so really with this bill is to promote health equity, autonomy, and health equity and autonomy for patients with limited English proficiency. And the last bill that we're asking for support is a Senate bill, Senate Bill 5122, which is raising the Age Act. And what that does is it adjusts the age of the juvenile court jurisdiction to match modern science, assuring that youth too young to interact with the criminal system are given more appropriate interventions in the community. And it creates a task force to explore aligning the start of adult jurisdiction with the age of adult brain development. This bill is about fairness in addressing the criminalization of young people who are disproportionately BIPOC. It advances racial equity by providing youth with more developmentally appropriate interventions and opportunities for responses that center transformation. And the last bill on our agenda is a bill that we're actually actively opposing, House Bill 2037. It's a really bad policing bill, and many of our partner organizations, including the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability and ACLU Washington, amongst many other strong partner organizations, are actively fighting against it. So you may have received an action alert in the last week. You'll probably receive some more from us opposing House Bill 2037. And one of the reasons why we're really against this bill is that it allows officers to use force if someone is fleeing, without considering the many reasons that someone might flee from an encounter with law enforcement, right? It authorizes force simply because a person seeks to avoid police contact, regardless of whether or not they actually know they're being detained. And really is a step backwards from the progress we made last session, with the police accountability bills, and is a backward step for racial equity and reducing police violence. All of these bills, you would find more information from the emails I have sent, with one-pagers. If you don't have a meeting with your legislator later today, but are interested in receiving these one-pagers, please let us know in the chat, and we'll make sure to contact you. And if we could go to the next slide. Great, so we're gonna do a little walkthrough with the legislator homepage. We're not gonna go too into depth, but that's what we'll do, so you can kind of get a little, feel for what it looks like. As you can see, it's not the most intuitive, but I'll walk you through to where we can find, the most basic information. So the first thing you see in the center of the page, it's what's happening on the floor. As you see, the scheduled hearings, the sessions happening on the floor today, the committees, the agenda, and then the times, right? And then on the right, where it says, let your voice be heard, there are a couple of different tabs. One of them says contact your legislators, participating in the process, etc. Katie, if you could actually click on the first tab where it says contact your legislators. Great. So as you can see here, it basically lists out all of the different representatives or legislators. And if you can click on the first one, Representative Peter Abarno. He's from District 20. Okay, I'm not from District 20, but we're just doing this. So if I wanted to send an email to Representative Peter Abarno, the first thing I would see is that it actually tells you to verify your legislative district, which is really helpful in case you get it wrong. You put in your address and then you would click verify district and it'll pop up. It'll let you know if Representative Peter is actually in your district or not. You don't need to put in your address, Katie. Then you would enter your contact information, your name, your email, so they can get back to you. And then if you could scroll a little down, step 3. So this is like if you want to, if your email is about a specific bill, you would kind of note that by putting the bill number right there. And then the subject line, it does have a 100-character limit, so it's a very short email. I'll tell you guys how you would be able to actually contact your legislator through their legislative assistant if you want to actually email them, something longer or schedule a meeting. But yeah, so you would send in your email right there. You would type in your subject line and then the message. So the subject line has a character limit. The message does not. So you'd be able to actually type in a full message here, and then you would toggle whether or not you want the representative to get back to you. If you want to send an email, but you don't really want to hear back, you could say no. If you actually want to respond back, you would say yes, and then you would submit form. So that's how you would, quickly send an email to your legislator on the legislator homepage. If you could go back, Katie, to the main page. Great. And then you could see on the far left, it says legislator home tab, and then it says House of Representatives, Senate, find your district, blah, 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 a bunch of other other information. You could see there's, you'd be able to find the agenda, schedule, the legislative calendar. If you're wondering, what's the cutoff date for when bills are passed? You'd be able to see that information, what the last day of session is, when the first day of session is, all that good stuff. And then, so going back up to the House of Representatives and Senate, earlier I mentioned, if you want to schedule a meeting with your representative, an easy way to do that is really, click on one of those tabs, and you could actually search that you could, you could click on whether or not you, yeah, thank you, Katie. You could either search members by name or you could do members by district. And so if you're looking for a certain district, you would do that. And yeah, and then you would be able to click on there. If you could click on members by district, Katie. So we could do a quick run through. Yeah, let's click on Representative Davina Dwyer. The first one, yeah. So we click on it and then it takes you to this like homepage. If you could click on her name right there, it says homepage. It actually will take you to the legislators website and then you'd be able to click contact me and then it would have information with their about their legislative assistant and how you would be able to, you know, contact Representative Dwyer. So that's how you would schedule meetings. You could send emails, follow up, all of that good stuff. So yeah, if you could go back to the main page. Great. Another part of the page that I really wanted to highlight is where it says bill information. If you could click on that. Okay. So this is where you'd be able to search the bill that you're interested in. So if you could type in 1852, that's one of the bills that we're advocating for MDAC. So that is the, you know, bill on the prescription drug labels that I was talking about. As you can see here, we can see the sponsors on the bill. The first name is usually the representative that introduced it. And then it has a companion bill, which means it's also been introduced in the Senate. And then if you go down, you could see this box here. It shows the current version. It says substitute, which means this bill is actually being, a substitute bill is currently being written for this bill, which really means usually if there's like certain limitations on a bill, if they want to, you know, add, you know, amendments, I guess, to the bill, they would create substitute language. And so that's what they're working on now. And then we could also see the status of the bill. So it says H second reading. So earlier when I was talking about how a bill becomes a law, before it, you know, goes to the second chamber, there's like multiple readings it has to go through, right? And so it says that this is actually on its second reading. So if we could go down a little bit. Thanks, Katie. Here it shows the bill history. You see when the bill was filed for introduction, all of the readings it's been through. It also had a public hearing, so you could have like done testimony on it. It had an executive session, which is when internally the chamber debates and talks about a bill. And then, yeah, and February 9th, which is today, as of today, it's on, it says Rules Committee relieved of further consideration, which means it's placed on the second hearing. So it moved on to the next step, right? And then under available documents, if you actually want to read the bill, you'd be able to click on there and you'd see the original bill as well as the substitute bill, and then compare and contrast, you know, what's changed since it was introduced, and how is it different from the original bill. And then at the very bottom, I'll be talking about this a little later as well, but it actually shows the videos or testimony committee hearings. And so these are from the past, obviously, but the videos are archived. So if you were interested in a bill and, you know, missed a hearing and you really wanted to hear about what was discussed, you'd be able to see that here as well under this page. So great. Thanks, Katie. I think that is good there. If we could go back to the slides. That's kind of a quick intro. We'll probably go back on the website to discuss something else. But yeah, when preparing for testifying, I'll let it load for a second. Great. So when preparing for testifying, you really want to make sure that you know what the purpose of your speech is, what your ask is, and stick to your talking points, keeping it precise, timing yourself so you know that You can keep track of how long it takes, talking it through with someone, all of that. Those are really good tips on testifying. If you can go to the next slide, please, Katie. So there are a couple of ways to testify. You have the opportunity to provide written testimony. You could state your position on a bill without testifying. You could just, say whether or not you support it or oppose it. And then you could also register to testify remotely via video conference by registering at the committee sign-in. So Katie, if you could actually click on that link, please. Great. So you see this page and it says which committee, or sorry, it says, it shows you the different chamber agencies that you could click on to submit testimony for. So it's important you kind of know where your bill is, so you could do that, right? So if you could actually press Senate for me. And then if you could choose the Committee for Transportation. And then, okay, great. Cool. So this Committee of Transportation happens to have a hearing tomorrow at 8 a.m., right? The first thing you see is the agenda items. If you could click on that bill, or click on the, yeah. So once you click on that, they're going to be talking about the Senate Bill 5974, transportation resources. You could choose from here how you would testify. Or how you would like to submit your testimony, whether that's testifying remotely, if you just want to have your position noted for the legislative record, and then if you would like to actually submit written testimony. So you would click on whichever one you is relevant to you, and then go from there. If you do, there are like specific timeframes in which you could testify. You could only testify live an hour. You have to register an hour before the actual hearing, otherwise it closes. And the same thing for noting your position. But submitting written you could submit written testimony up to 24 hours after the actual hearing. So that one has a little bit more flexibility. And then if you could click a different committee, if you could do, let's do Law and Justice. Okay. Okay, let's go maybe do another one, State Government and Elections. And then, yeah, let's do that, 8:30. Cool. So that's happening today. Okay, well, actually, I wanted to show you guys a committee, the Law and Justice Committee, because they had a previous hearing yesterday, but it looks like it's not showing on the legislative website. I think it's because it's been more than 24 hours. But if you have a meeting, if there's a committee hearing, and you check before it actually reaches the 24-hour mark, you could see who has, which organizations or which people have signed in and stated their position. Oh yeah, perfect, there you go. I didn't even see that. Thanks, Katie. So far there hasn't been a whole lot of people, not a whole lot of action on this bill, but you could see that, Peter Lukvich, his position is pro on this bill, so he's for this bill. But for really popular bills, you would see there would be so much, so many names, and it's just a really good sense to know who's supporting this, what are their opinions on this, and etc. So yeah, if you could go back to the slides, that is a little walkthrough of the legislator website. There is a lot on the legislator website, so we weren't able to actually go through it like the entire thing. It would have taken a long time, but I hope that provided some guidance, and I would highly encourage you to play around and just like check out the website, take some time and figuring out where certain things are. It truly does make a difference, and the more you do it, the more easier it gets. But yeah, if you could go to the next slide, please, Katie. Yeah, so, actually, can you go back to the last slide? I actually wanted to mention there is a tab called Coming to the Legislator. Seemab, if you could put that in the chat below, that would be great. But it's on the homepage of the legislator website, and it really has a lot of resources. It also has the legislative hotline number, which I think we have on the slide as well. And you could, ask questions if you have any issues navigating the site there. But yeah, so that concludes the tour of the website. If you could go to the next slide, please, Katie. Great. So there are other ways to connect to the Capitol. You can mail or email your legislator. You could be part of protests and marches. Yeah, so you can really stay, I would highly encourage to stay engaged with your legislator, even outside, especially outside of the session. If you can go to the next slide, please. Great. So yeah, the Capitol is, it's not the only place that things are happening. State agencies have opportunities for public input. Local government holds a lot of power, makes decisions that directly impact your life, whether that's city council, meetings, state school board meetings. Always remember that, your voice matters, your community matters, and collectively, truly, you can make a difference if you choose to do so. So don't ever feel like, you're just one person. That voice, your opinion really matters. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide, please. Great. So just another reminder about our session coming up at 11 o'clock. We have our local policy expert panel with this great, guest speaker lineup. The purpose of that panel really is to make public policy understandable and accessible to Muslims in Washington State. It will be recorded if you can't make it. But yeah, that concludes the end of our presentation. Thank you to Seemab for co-hosting this with me, and Katie for navigating the tech. Since we are running a little early, I'd like to see if we maybe give a minute or two to see if we have any questions in the chat. I don't see any questions coming in. Are there any questions on the Facebook Live? Great. Yeah, that's great. So what can we expect after MDAC? That's a great question. Expect to still continue receiving emails from us on action alerts and things you can do really to support the work that we're doing. I mentioned earlier the Afghan refugee resettlement bills that we really are trying to get pushed through. They're budget related resolutions that we're really trying to get the governor to push through. So we definitely will ask for your support on that. We may ask for support on House Bill 2037, the bad policing bill, as well as some other policy bills that us or our partner organizations are pushing. You could expect a follow-up email from me or CAIR Washington probably tomorrow, just following up on MDAC, thanking you all for attending. But yeah, so expect to continue, getting information from us. And if you are really interested in being looped into like our policy work and really want to be extra engaged, let us know, and we'll make sure that, we add you to our network that we send our action alerts and all of that. So yeah, great. Thanks for that question in the chat. Like I said, I think that concludes the end of our presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Seemab, for co-hosting this with me. Thank you, Katie, for navigating the tech. Thank you, Amanda, for the monumental work in polishing the slides and drafting our one-pagers, and for folks responding via chat. And thank you to our sponsor, Somali Health Board, for continuing to partner with us every year. And lastly, thank you to all of you at home watching, staying engaged, and staying in tune to our work. It looks like we have some extra time, so I will give you the last couple of minutes. Thank you so much, and salam alaikum.